All right, what is going on, peeps? Everything working out there? Can you hear me? Am I live? Sorry, I hooked up this old Sabadius Univibe. It's been a little while since I played it. And I was like, oh God, I gotta go. I gotta go deep. Had a little, Watchtower jam track going already. And what can I say? I indulged. This isn't about lead. It can be if you guys have questions about lead, but it was really more about rhythm. So, I don't know about you all out there, but when I was a kid, I was super 80s metal. And just Racer X, Dawkins, Rat, yes! Full, you couldn't tell me anything about anything other than 80s metal that resonated with me and all. I'm like, yeah, I just don't care. No, they suck. Jimi Hendrix, who's that loser? And then there was this one woman who we'd go out to the pool and she had a super hot daughter. And I was like, I don't know, 13 or whatever. I think her daughter was about 18. She's like, you should come over to the house. And I'm like, yeah, that'd be awesome. She's like, I hear you playing guitar. You should check out some Jimi Hendrix. And I was like, Hendrix, he sucks, whatever. And so she tried to plant some seeds in me. And I was like, okay, whatever. And then I started hearing some stuff and I wasn't quite, she had more Crash Landing stuff, which was cool. Now I love Crash Landing. But I remember being, around that same time, maybe 14, cruising in my mom's, she had this blue Ford Topaz back in the day, sitting in the back street. And I think in the back seat, and I think my brother was actually driving home, and we were listening to the classic rock station, and then Bold as Love came on, and I was like, "What is that?" And my brother was like, "Dude, that's Jimi Hendrix." And I was like, "Yeah, but no, it can't be the same guy I heard." And it was. So that was really what broke through to me, that sound. How is he getting that cool rhythm sound? Because up until then, it was all about the maiden gallop and all this other stuff. And I was like, man, I really want to know how to do this other thing I'm hearing. And I didn't know that, obviously Hendrix wasn't the originator of it. But, as time passed, I found that, he does that double stop thing. That's when he does it, I just love it, right? And there's great people now too, or Stevie Ray is awesome at it. John Mayer is incredible at it. Obviously the Chili Peppers, John Frusciante, or however you say his last name. All those guys, they're great people at it. But to me, Hendrix is still the man. Now, when it comes to actually learning that style, whether it's Watchtower or Bold as Love or Little Wing, it's really a lot less complex than you would think. And we can do this a couple of ways. I'll start by doing it with chord shapes and then how you attach a pentatonic scale to it. I could go into the caged method, but some people out there don't know the cage system, and that works really well too. But I'll just stick in a basic chord shape and what scale shape you can use to get that sound. So there's two different chords we're gonna have to worry about. They're different, how you play major chords and how you play minor chords. So let's say we're in, that track I was doing was a very Watchtower track, right? And the progression would be B minor, A, and G. Now, this doesn't give you the same amount of time to do all that cool stuff like Little Wing or Bold as Love. It doesn't hang on the chords as long, but this is a good start. So anytime you see this big E-shaped chord, right? Anytime you see one of these big, chords that looks like this is called an E-shaped chord because this part of the chord looks like an E, right? And the root's on the E string, the whole 9 yards. So in this case, we're doing a minor chord. But anytime you see one of these, think about pentatonic position 1 being right underneath your fingers, okay? And that is this one. Okay? So, what you can do is start to notice, especially on this G string, D string, and A string, they have the same frets. So these double stops It's a great place. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking 2 strings and hitting them at one time. That's what's called the double stop, right? But I'm hammering onto the lower string. So in this particular instance, I'm hitting the B and the G string, but I'm hammering on to the G string. Now the trick is you want to keep this finger nice and round, okay? So you want to be able to hear both notes. Now he doesn't always do a double stop, right? Some of the licks like in Watchtower, like that's not a double stop. And there's, you know, you can do that too. But the double stop sound, more often than not, again, is playing 2 strings at once and hammering on to the lower string. So in this case, it's a whole step. Right? So just practice doing those groups of 2s, right? So you got G and B, you got D and G, and then you got A and D, right? Now you can also slide the double stop. Right? He does that a lot. Robin Trower does that a lot, like in the, what's that? That sort of a thing, right? So don't forget about the slide. It doesn't always have to be a double stop. A huge part of his sound is sliding into licks, right? But just because we have the double stops here, doesn't mean we can't do these higher strings. Okay, so that particular lick, right? I'm just hammering on. I'm starting from the lower note, higher note, just following right down the scale. And then a lot of it is the rhythmic value you attach onto how you're playing it. Okay, so you can do a hammer and a pull-off, where you really hear, or you can do it really quick. Right, so it's not, it's, so, see the difference? So you got, okay, so that's totally what you can do with that E minor shape. Now you can slide too. Now also, this doesn't have to be strictly a minor thing. A lot of times when you're playing and you hear it like the, that sort of a thing, and you're hammering onto the major third, you can still kind of mess around with that minor. Right? You can do all that sort of a thing, right? And that's just, you know, I'm playing off of that same minor pentatonic box, even though I might not just be doing double stops, I might be throwing in that major third. So you can do that too, right? If the song is kind of predominantly in one of those kind of jammy kind of things, it's cool because you can play lead and rhythm at the same time, right? So like the, but all those things, double stop, right? That same thing, double stop, I'm bending it. So I'm mixing all of those things, right? I told you you could do the single note ones, so like, right? That's just sliding up real far and then coming back to that minor third. But, you know, maybe I am only doing single note runs, right? Or I can, right? So there were double stops. Okay, so that's kind of how that minor shape, it's super, super fun. One of the things I love to do at night is just put on like, you know, some sort of a basic drum beat. Actually, the ironic thing is the patch that I like to play a lot. I have this drum program called Superior Drummer. And there's also another one called Easy Drummer. Highly, highly recommend all you people out there that really want to start getting a handle on your rhythm game. Get some sort of a program that has drum loops, and you'll be shocked at how just hearing a different beat can really inspire you to play in a totally different way. But what I'll do is I'll put on a basic drum beat, and then I'll just work with those kind of, you know, rhythms, right? And messing around with that pentatonic scale, right? Right, where I'm pedaling off, I'm using my thumb, and I'll go back and forth between like a bass rhythm, and then I'll come down to like the D, right? So. Just see if I can pocket the riffs with the drum groove, right? And keep that going. And that'll really help dial in that sort of sound, okay? So when you have a major version of that chord, so when you go down like in the Watchtower progression, or in Bold as Love, right? It starts on that A. That sort of a vibe. A lot of those cool major licks come from, if you just look at this shape right here, underneath your fingers is pentatonic shape 2. Now let me clarify this, because somebody was commenting on how I talk about the pentatonic positions. Theoretically, there's a way to number the scale shapes, right? Some people start with the root, and so in major, some people might call this position 1 because you're starting with the root. In my own particular way of doing things, I just call them shape 1, shape 2, shape 3, and that way I can talk about them whether or not I'm in a major or a minor progression. I can just talk about them the same. I consider this to be shape 1. This to be shape 2. Right? And then that way in my own mind, I can have one thing I show to students and just be like, no, it's play out of shape 1, okay? So shape 2 would be what's under this big E-shaped major chord, right? So, Okay? Now, this is a super, super fun spot. So right off the bat, you can do the slide right there, right? So look at the chord shape. So right there alone, we got a cool slide. Also, let me go back. Somebody else mentioned about the thumb, right? I can't do the thumb, my hands aren't that big. My hands aren't that big either. So when we talk about using the thumb, because that's really a huge thing in his style. Sorry, let me get a little, throat's getting dry. A lot of people try to press flat with their thumb, right? And they're like, man, my hands just don't do it, because automatically, look what it does to the shape of your hand. It like crunches this over here. If you were to scoot, if you notice, like right here on my thumb, like the string's right there. I'm not flat, I'm on the side of my thumb. And it really doesn't take very much pressure to be able to do it. So you know, even if you don't have big hands, you don't have to be like Hendrix and have, you know, the thumb that goes from your E to E. I mean, he's got freaking massive hands. I don't have hands like that. You can just tilt on the side, and honestly, I mean, I am barely touching the string at all. Like, it's just barely being pressed down. And what that does is that allows this to happen with my hand, right? It allows this to open up, and then I can keep my fingers rounded so I hear all the notes. You can do those, all those cool things that are in that kind of a chord shape as well, right? But it lets you kind of, if you want to do that sort of thing and use this as more of like a bass or a rhythm and then hop between licks like that, it allows you to do that and keep that note ringing if you want, which can be a very, very cool sound. So back to our shape. So, I mean, you can play it like this, but these kind of licks, you'll just have to stop with the bass. So if you can't do that, just play a normal bar chord, but I know you can. So just work on going to the side of your thumb, not flat, on the side, okay? So here we go, this part. Okay, now with that in mind, that's a cool lick. You have that. Now you also can do double stops. The suspended one's not always gonna work, but you'll hear it a lot. So in this particular case, I have that shape and I'm hammering on the 7th fret. I'm on an A major chord. I'm hammering the 7th fret, E, and then going to the 5th fret B. Gonna do the same thing on the B and then go to the A. And then on the G, I did more of the suspended thing. Now that's not always gonna work. It does work there because that's part of that B minor chord, right? It's the 3rd. So that suspend will work. But it doesn't, you can sneak it in here, but in reality, that's where the note is in the scale, right? Which is also a cool sound. But it's hard to get that quick. So, you got, that's just hitting all the strings one at a time, okay? You can do a double stop. I am a Pearl Jam fan. I like the earlier Pearl Jam stuff. I think Stone Grosser, don't quote me on this. I don't know both guitar players' names. They're both great at doing this Hendrix thing. I don't know who the main guy is that does all the Hendrix stuff. Another great band at doing this style. Okay, so. And then, now my favorite thing to do in this particular spot is when you put your thumb here and you make kind of like a D chord shape with your first 2 fingers. So this would be on G4 and B5, and then I'm hammering into the 3rd of the chord. Right? And then you can grab the root with your pinky if you want. I mean, my hand's not that big. Sometimes it's hard for me to get that. Right, and you can play with the lower strings as well, but what I find is the cooler part of the lower part of the chord is, remember, if this right here is position 2, right under, or shape 2, right underneath your fingers, that means pentatonic shape 3 is right behind the chord. Now this is super cool because you can do the E, A, and D strings, right? So in this particular A chord, I can utilize 7 to 9 on all 3 of those strings. Right? So I can do those double stop things there. Now this is a cool spot too because it helps you transition up to another A chord shape, which is like this D shape. Right now, the way to find that shape, you can find this D shape of that same A chord in a couple of different ways. You can look for, you know, here is a basic D chord shape. This can be the root, right, on the B string, or if you want to do the whole shape, it looks like this. Okay, and then that would be the real bass root of it, right? The A right here. But you can do that same thing we did here. Here. Okay, so remember that part of the chord. And then just like you would do a D, right? If this was a capo. This time, you're starting from the chord shape and hammering into another note, right? Not the third, right? In this case, this is the 5th of the chord. This is the 3rd down here. So it's a different sound then. So this is a great one. And that would be what is either the D shape in Caged or the C. Or you can look at it as position 4. Back into 2 where the chord resides. So we got any questions on the E-shaped chords, major or minor versions?
We just got a question from Simon Doyle
asking
what pedal settings are dialed in for the overdrive.
Actually, right now, I am plugged straight into the Divided by 13 BTR23. I do not have any pedals on right now. The reverb and the delay are coming from the Universal Audio aux. You might be able to see in the background. No cabinets being used. I'm going straight into that Divided by 13 head, the purple one, into the aux back there, into my computer. And I can show you, this Divided by 13 is on as well. And that one, no pedals as well. Now, interestingly enough, I've turned these both on for a reason. A lot of people ask me about, you know, tone or whatever, and how do I get that tone? And, oh, I don't have that kind of an amp, so that won't work. The reason I turned both of these on is this bottom amp has KT88s, and that would be what was in like a Marshall Major, like Richie Blackmore used to use back in the day. And this amp is sort of like if you rolled a Tweed Bassman, a Vox, and a Marshall all into one, right? And the KT88s are really like scaled down because the amp really only runs at about 23 watts clean and about 40 watts, you know, spiked out all the way. And this other amp, you can still get a great Hendrix tone out of it. It has two back ends, right? It has 6V6 back end, which are like normally associated with like maybe a Fender amp. And it also has EL84s, which are like a Vox. So none of the amps I have here today are strictly a Marshall kind of a thing. So that's another part of the Hendrix sound. A lot of it is just how you play and, you know, like maybe switching to your neck pickup. Not being overly trebly, or, you know, sometimes I have it set a little bit higher just so if I'm recording or whatever. But not a lot of bass, you know? And a lot of the sound you're hearing, because I have the auxes, is the back end of the tube amp. And what I mean by that is the power tubes themselves have a very definite sound. Like when you saw Hendrix play live, if you ever watched any clips of him, those amps are about to explode, right? And so the cool thing about that is you get the power tube distortion, which is a very big, cool sounding thing. And that allows you to actually turn the preamp down, right? And you get this big, fat, warm power tube breakup and not so much of a preamp breakup. So both of these amps, this top one, which I'm playing right now, is turned up about halfway. Right, and if I turned on the, you know, the vibe, oh, I can't. It's not routed through that pedal. Right, it still gets that sound. Now here's the other amp. It's a little darker. But that amp is cranked, right? The master volume is on 10. Now, back in the day, if you guys have ever seen my Hendrix videos, I mean, just up until I got these auxes, this particular amp, the BTR-23, has a fantastic master volume in it. So, you know, what you've heard on almost all of my really popular Hendrix lessons as far as teaching a song is that amp at a whisper volume. So, you know, the power tube thing definitely is a sound, but it's not necessary. So much of it back then was I would take this purple amp and set it, you know, gained up a little bit, and then I would use a boost. Like if you can go to that pedal board shot, I would use this lift pedal a lot, and that just kind of kicks the front end of the amp, kicks it in the pants, or this RC Booster. This RC Booster, these two, for a long time, I would run those two pedals either together or one at a time, but I would use boosts more over than like an overdrive pedal per se, because I already really like the tone of the amp. Now, that being said, if I'm in this other chain where I have, yeah, okay, see there it is. Now check this out. I'm not going off on a tone tangent really quick, but I just kicked on the Iridium Fuzz. These two are awesome. I was gonna do a demo of them today too. Sabadius, who makes this funky vibe, which is my favorite vibe pedal, makes really extraordinarily good Hendrix pedals. Check him out. Just super freaking cool dude. Great, great, great pedals. But I'll do some demos on just his fuzz pedals at another time because I really wanted to get him dialed in and do them justice because he's an awesome dude. But the funky vibe, right, gets that. I'll turn the fuzz off. Now, another trick you can do is turn on a fuzz like you would set it to like full-blown molten lava setting, right? So, like that. And then, you know, maybe neck pickup, and then roll the volume down. And check this out. And you have a lot of room to play. So if I turn on like my loop, here we go, let's see. I can really mess around with the volume and just get a lot of different tones, right? If I wanted to be quiet. Roll it up a little bit. Maybe a little bit more. Right, and then up all the way. So now I get more sustain. Right, so that's another cool thing to do is put a fuzz in front of your sound turned all the way up like you normally would. You can hear it in Bold as Love, right? You can hear him like crank his fuzz at the end. Or like if you watch, I think there's footage of it. I remember seeing it as a kid. Some of the Band of Gypsies stuff where he has his fuzz on, but he rolls down his volume. I mean, you just watch any of the live performances, you'll see him do it. And he gets just a huge array of tones just by working the pickups, right? You know, you can mess with your tone knob, you can mess with, you know, the different voices. He plays in the middle position a lot, treble, always watching me, he's always working his guitar. And that way, the cool thing is you don't have to do a whole bunch of, you know, pedal tap dancing. You can just use your volume knob. Eddie Van Halen back in the day too. Watch those guys back in the day when they didn't have a lot of gear. A lot of those people just got so many of the tones you're looking for by switching their pickups and working the volume knob. All right, so long-winded explanation on the tone, but I hope that helps. What else do we got?
We had a question asking when your rhythm stuff is coming out.
Okay, so now that we have Josh over here, you can't see him. I was trying to get it out a while ago, but I had courses with Corey Congilio, Robbie Calvo, Jeff Mackerline's got an awesome freaking course coming out, and so that really just bogged me down editing, and I didn't work on it as much as I should. Now that I have some help, I would imagine top of the year you're gonna start seeing a lot more. For the members, you know, you'll start seeing a lot more lessons in there. There's some exclusive membership videos as well. Half of the Hendrix course, not even half, I would say about 25 videos of the Hendrix course that I'm doing is already available in the membership. But I'm gonna start doing a dedicated rhythm course, I would say sometime in January. So hopefully I can get it out by the end of January. But I'm gonna start focusing a lot more on teaching songs and rhythm, you know, and making rhythm more a priority because I love rhythm guitar as well. So again, top of the year, probably January, February, we'll probably see a rhythm product. And then the Hendrix thing I'm trying to get out in December sometime. I'm trying to. I listened to some of the jam tracks that I had, which were great, but I'm gonna go back in the studio and get some freaking monster Nashville guys to make some awesome rhythm tracks for us. So when you jam along to these kind of things I'm showing you now, you'll have a killer band to play to.
David Escroft is asking, what gauge strings are you using?
I'm a total wuss. I'm 9s all the way. When I started, I was 8s. You know, Rick Beato, same thing. Lots of great tone. I remember back in the day, one of my buddies was running a session for, it wasn't ZZ Top, but Billy Gibbons was recording something. And he's like, dude, you gotta check out this guitar. And I went in there, it was tuned down a whole step with 8s on it. So there is kind of a tone thing, you know, depending on how you play the guitar physically, like how hard you want to be able to hit it and keep it really in tune. Sometimes it's cool to have, you know, higher gauge strings, I guess, like 10s or 11s, but man, almost all my favorite players use 9s. So, I mean, Yngwie's got one of my favorite like strat tones ever, uses 8s, tuned down a half step. So, you know, it's a lot of it's all just how you play as well. So I like 9s just because it's easy. One of my favorite sets though, but I don't think Elixir, and that's the kind of strings that I use, makes it, was Ernie Ball made a set called Hybrid Slinkies, which is 10s on the low string and 9s on the higher string. Loved that set a lot too, because you can really pound on those lower strings and it you know, will take a beating and not go out of tune as much, but then you have the ease of bending from the 9 side of the set.
We got Jason Carter asking about your t-shirt.
My t-shirt, Lucky brand, has a bunch of cool concert tees and stuff like that, and I just saw that. I think my wife got it for me.
Here we had, for Hendrix stuff, is there a substitute for Fuzz through a distortion or OD pedal? Someone mentioned Little Wing earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I was, for most of what a lot of what I've been doing today, I just plugged straight into the amp. And then, like if I turned on, there's this pedal called an Archer, which is a Rockett pedal, and it's kind of like a clon. You could do like a boost. Let's see what. Right, here's without it. With it. I can do that same trick, roll the volume down. Right, so another pedal I like a lot for Hendrix stuff is that Fulldrive V2, the version 2. Great pedal for that Hendrix thing. Also, a lot of people use it like tube screamers, right? Stevie Ray Vaughan. Depends on kind of what amp format you have. Some pedals play, you know, better with other kind of amp circuits. I tend to kind of lean towards the Marshall side of things, so I pick particular pedals that work great with that. I think that the clones and most boosts work great with any, you know, amp format, but some of the more mid-range centric pedals, like tube screamers and stuff like that, just work better with Fenders and Marshalls than they would say with a Vox that's already has a good inherent bump in the mid-range department. So Just kind of depends with what you're going with. Anything works, man. I mean, I could play in a line 6 pod and get a great Hendrix sound. It's a lot of it's just really physically how you play the guitar and being on the neck pickup a lot. You know, Hendrix, a lot of those, you know, Bold as Love, Little Wings, a lot of that kind of stuff is, you know, the pickups up here more so than the back. So that's a big part of the sound too, is like the neck pickup or middle pickup or whatever.
Mooner is asking, do you base the scale position based on the root note of the progression, or do you play related to the chord you are playing over?
Well, I can do both. I'm doing a course right now, a free mini course. I'm trying to get out Thanksgiving for everybody. It's a soloing mini course that does do both. You can do both, right? You can, you know, like that, what I said about this chord shape, and that, if you want to play to the changes, like when I go down to this chord, if I was not going to play by scale, but just by, like, say I was in a chord progression, I didn't know what the key was. What I just showed you here, how position 1 is underneath this minor chord, or shape 1, I should say. And then shape 2 is under this. You can actually do that. You can, underneath these specific E versions of these chords, anytime you see a minor chord, that shape 1's underneath your fingers. Anytime you see that shape right there, the major shape, the E shape, that shape is underneath your fingers too. And then, so a lot of people, when they play to a key, like they play to the chords in the progression rather than just sticking into one key. That's what they'll do, right? They know that around certain chord shapes, like this chord shape, the major version, position 2 is underneath your fingers, right? So you can, which means if 2's here, then 1's here, and 3's here, right? As soon as you start to really ingrain that into your brain, that what you can play around a specific chord shape attached to a scale shape, then you can actually just play to the changes. I think a lot of jazz guys end up doing that when there's, like, you know, they're switching keys and doing all this stuff. It's like, how are they doing that? Well, they're playing around the actual chords themselves a lot of times. And sometimes they're playing, you know, in a key or whatever, or in a mode. But, you know, if you see like these A-shaped chords, right? Like, think of an A chord, right? So the D string bar chords, underneath your fingers is position 5. Right, so, and in this Hendrix rhythm style, you can do that. Right, I'm just playing out of that pentatonic. But in this particular chord shape, I typically think about it as the 1 shape is right behind this one. Is right behind these chords, so. Right? I don't play off of the 5 shape, even though I know that's right underneath my fingers. I do sometimes. Right? But that's playing off of a chord shape itself rather than sticking to a key, right? And that works, right? Anytime you see a chord like that, you can do those kind of moves. Right? So if I had like, trying to think, like if I played E, sharp minor, A. Now underneath my fingers here, right, on this E chord, I could play that shape 1. Right, now I have that 2. If I go here to that minor shape, that 1. I'm actually playing off of the chord shape. Now, you're gonna find that as you progress and start to know your fretboard better, you're like, oh, you're actually playing out of a mode still, right? You're still in key. That's one way to think about it. But if you're playing in a progression that doesn't stick to a key, like punk music or something like that, where they're just moving around with chords and it's not in a key per se, you can play around in solo effectively by playing what's underneath this chord shape, right? That position 2. That position 1. The major version right here of this A-shaped chord is position 5. But again, I play off the back side of it where I can have that kind of, that position 1, right? The minor version of that chord, like in Little Wing, is imagine shape 4. Right, and the Little Wing sort of thing. That sort of a sound. Anytime you see this kind of a minor shaped chord, think that position 4 is right underneath your fingers. Right, and so that's how you can play to the changes. You can also, still play in a key, but if you want to, a lot of times what will happen is if you start playing to a scale, your brain gets locked into just playing like pentatonic shapes. If you start playing around chord shapes, you'll start to choose different intervals, right, in your soloing. And that can be a really cool thing to break you out of just standard pentatonic playing, because instead of doing a scale where it's like, okay, right, A minor, pentatonic. Well, around this E chord, I could still stick to position 2. But if I thought more from this chord shape, I could go. So, versus, right? If I see that position 4, I have other note options, and it's going to get me different intervals if I didn't know the modes, right? So that's a really cool thing about playing around chord shapes, is you're going to choose different intervals, and the end game would be able to do both, right? Be able to play around the changes, but also know enough to where you knew what key you were in if the song stuck to a particular key.
Gabe King is asking, what is the first thing you typically play when you pick up the guitar?
That depends on what I'm doing. Like, if I'm doing something where I just want to warm up really quickly, I'll do chromatic, like. That sort of a thing. And I basically pick 4 frets, like 1 per finger, and I mix it up as randomly as I can. So maybe sometimes I'm doing, 2 notes on one string one way, and then 2 notes on the lower string another way. All that kind of stuff, just random finger twisters. Or a lot of times I'll work on like using the cage system to work on a progression and to like just plot out, like seeing a whole, if I'm doing like a chord progression. Like taking each, if that's in, let's say A major or whatever, try to find that chord progression in each of my scale patterns, right? So if I'm like down here in position 4, trying to make melodies. Like these days, I'm a lot less inclined to just try to shred noodle than I am to sit down and actually try to create melodies and be able to play what I'm hearing in my head exactly when I hear it, right? And training myself more in intervals. I've been doing a lot more of that lately than anything. I haven't been working on speed as much, but that, or when I do want to work on speed, I've been starting to utilize both of these fingers a lot when I do, you know, hybrid picking. And getting that stuff down. Whereas before, for a long time, I just did, you know, this one finger. Which works great, but when you have two, I've been working on doing that kind of stuff. So when I do want to do some sort of a flashy, fast riff, I can actually pull it off. The trick is, even at my whole game now is just slow down, slow down, slow down. I remember one time when I used to film a lot with Tim Pierce, the power went out, you know, and we couldn't shoot for the day. You know, his whole rig was dark. And he's like, well, I'll give you a guitar lesson. You know, we'd always talked about trading, you know, I'll film you and you give me a guitar lesson. And it ended up, we just always just filmed, you know. So I think this is like the one lesson I ever really got from Tim, and it was awesome. He watched me playing fast and he's like, you know, your licks are cool. I like your phrasing a lot, but you're letting off the notes too soon. Like you're choking out the notes, right? And so be more connected. Let your phrases, you know, the notes just run right into each other so it sounds really fluid. Because if you watch Tim play, you know, some of the licks is like, man, that's crazy how good that lick is. But then when he breaks it down slowly and you see what he's doing, it's like, wow, that's really not that hard. I mean, it's hard, don't get me wrong. But the fingering and the note choice of what he's doing isn't that hard. It's how fluid he makes it sound in the moment really quickly, you know, over any given chord progression, which is the amazing thing. So what I work on a lot now too is doing those quicker runs. I'll practice in like medium speed and not play too, you know, not have this hand and this hand not syncing up. I really like want to make sure that the notes are all coming out and running right into each other so the stuff starts to sound really, really fluid. I practice that a lot more these days too.
Got Murph67 asking, what Hendrix song would you recommend for Hendrix beginners?
Wind Cries Mary, or that's probably the easiest one. If you like for the double stop thing, is that what he's asking about?
I didn't ask specifically about that.
Yeah, for the double stop thing, Wind Cries Mary. Solo's great too. Hey Joe has some of that stuff. It's not too bad. You know, it starts to show you how he, right, that whole, or whatever it is, starts to show you how some of that stuff works, how some of those double stops, even over normal chords, that kind of stuff, how he starts to do that kind of stuff, and it's not too hard. So I would go Wind Cries Mary, Hey Joe, Little Wing and Bold as Love, they're challenging, but if you do them slowly, anything done slowly, you know, and practice on letting the chords, like when you're doing the double stop, making sure like both notes are ringing through. Like that's not fast, right? But you can, or how does I go? I forget how it goes. Right, so you can do all that stuff slowly, right? start to learn that stuff and get it down. You just need to go slowly and realize it's a process. You know what I mean? It take you a while to really get it down good. But there's nothing that's too crazy. The hardest stuff for me that he does to get really good is when he starts doing the, you know, and making that sound effective and really cool. That to me is like the hard Hendrix stuff. But a lot of the songs really aren't that difficult. You know, even like Purple Haze. That's a great one to learn. Super basic chord progression. You could do Fire if you do it slow. Manic Depression's cool because it's not that fast, but it's a different type of a rhythm. Yeah, man, I would say a lot of Hendrix songs are definitely accessible as a beginner, but When Cries Mary and Hey Joe are probably the easiest right off the bat, you know, or Purple Haze. Yep. Sweet. Anything else? So, also, I forgot to say, the store is having a 30% off sale. If you guys are into this Hendrix type of thing, there is the beginning of the Hendrix course already in the membership. So anything at the store, all the courses at the store, whether it's mine or other people's, they're all 30% off until, I think, Thanksgiving night, maybe Friday. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I think it is. And yeah, I mean, all this stuff that we did today, is in there, but in much more depth. So if you're interested in this kind of thing, make sure you check out the store, brettpapa.com. And then there's a couple other shapes really quick before we're done that I did go over this, right? The A shape and then the minor shape, right? So remember here, we just kind of glossed over this really quickly, but when you see these D style chords, I'm sorry, A shaped chords, from the A string down, just think of that position 1 right here behind your fingers. So you got, right? And then if it's the minor shape, it's position 4. So that is both of the E shapes and the A shapes of the chords, and that'll get you through, you know, just about anything. Like even Castles Made of Sand, all those songs are basically, a lot of that is played out of those types of chords, E-shaped chords and A-shaped chords. The other cool thing is, I don't know if you guys know this chord or not, but this is like in Castles Made of Sand. So what you're doing is you're basically making a chord, but you're taking out the third of the chord. So you're hitting the root, the octave, so you got to mute out this A string. You mute out the G string, and then you got the B string. So in this particular instance, it would be the 3rd fret. And then on the 5th fret E, you have the 5th fret, right? On the 5th fret E, you have the 5th fret. That's pretty obvious. And you get those cool. I don't even remember how that one goes, but I think I did a lesson on it out there somewhere. But also, I'm going to do a lot more Hendrix stuff coming up, especially as the course gets closer. So let me know in the comment section what Hendrix songs you like. Now, there's a couple of you out there that have been asking for Villanova Junction for like 9 years. I'm going to do that song one day. I promise. It's just some of the Hendrix songs that are like a 5-minute solo take a long time to work out. But I would love to do that. I've been listening to a lot of stuff lately, and I'm gonna redo a lot of the Hendrix videos I've done, because now that there's isolated tracks, I hear it and I'm like, oh my gosh, listen to how much more cooler the part is than I thought it was. So some of those songs like Bold as Love and even Little Wing, there's some parts in there I was like, oh, that's what he's doing. once you take out the bass and all that other stuff that's going on, the Watchtower track, if you guys can find the isolated Watchtower track, oh man, there's so many like amazing rhythm licks that are buried in the mix in that one that's just incredible. I would highly suggest anybody out there, look for your favorite band and see if they have isolated guitar tracks. Hendrix is a great example because although he was a great technician, you're gonna find out, man, some of the parts, they're not played as cleanly as you thought they would be, but it doesn't matter because what it lacks in being technically proficient and clean, it's vibe. You're gonna hear so much in these tracks that it's like, they're not perfect to a click or any of this other stuff. They're just creating an incredible vibe. Now that's not an excuse not to be as good as you can be, but I think a lot of us beat ourselves up because we don't play perfectly. And you're gonna find when you hear these isolated guitar tracks from a lot of your, quote unquote guitar heroes, they're not as clean as you'd think they would be, or they fluctuate, or maybe a note's choked off and you never even noticed it before. But it's cool. And then in some instances you hear it and you're like, wow, he's even better than I thought he was. Like, listen to the Van Halen isolated tracks. It's just like, are you kidding me? This guy was like 22. Listen to the I'm the One isolated guitar track. It's ridiculous how good he is on guitar. Any other questions?
No more have popped up.
Sweet. All right, what time we got?
5 past noon.
All right, well that'll wrap up this stream. Thank you to everybody who joined us. Don't forget to check out brettpapa.com. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, make sure to subscribe and click the bell so you know when the live streams are going to be coming up. I'm going to try to do a live stream once a week, I think, on this channel, and I think I'm leaning towards like maybe a Wednesday afternoon. But so make sure you hit the bell so you know when the videos go live. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for the comments, for everything. A lot of people, they can't afford the courses, but they send me amazing emails and just a lot of real emotional support, and I totally appreciate that. I try to read every email and respond to every comment that I can, because you guys are just awesome. I mean, all of this, all the cameras, guitars, all this stuff is because of you guys out there, and I am so, so, so thankful for you out there. So until we meet again, we'll catch you next time.